We're on live now.
What's good? What's good? It's your boy Josh Jones, ESQ, also known as the Dope Black Lawyer. And before we get too deep into this, we're going to talk about. We're going to go into great detail a little bit later on about big girl on big girl violence. That's not cool, y'all. So we're going to talk about it. You already know we're talking about Lizzo. We're going to go all the way into that story in a way that you haven't seen anywhere else, and stay with us. So as I said, what they do. This is your boy, Josh Jones ESQ, and this is Dope Black Lawyer Live. So today we are going to be talking about all of the current events in hip hop, R&B, Black culture, sports, entertainment, and other stories that are important for you to know about as we go through this week. So I want to welcome you for the first time if you've never been here, and I want to welcome you back if you have. So let us know right now if this is your first time. Type Virgin in the chat. If you've been here before, let us know that you're an OG. So either way, again, welcome, welcome, welcome. We do this show for you. So please feel free to comment. Let us know where you're watching from. If you're, as you know, every week I'm live from the 305 Miami-Dade County. So we're here, and I want to know where you're watching from. So if you're in the chat right now, let us know. And if you're watching on the replay, also let us know where you're from. Let us know if you're watching live. Let us know if you're watching on the replay. Just let us know. We want to know who you are, what you're about. So we're not gonna delay. Welcome to DBL Live, and we're gonna go straight into that first story um, about Nicki Minaj. So if you didn't hear, someone called in the 911 saying that Nicki Minaj got shot. So law enforcement shows up to Nicki Minaj's place with an ambulance, and then they spoke to her, and she was unhappy that they called again. So somebody called multiple times. Nobody's been arrested for the call, and it doesn't seem like a lot is going to be done. This seems to happen to celebrities a lot. It's called swatting. That's what they call this out in California. So um, it's a misdemeanor, but nothing really comes of it if it doesn't result in any type of injury or death. If it does, then it becomes a felony. So, you know, Nicki Minaj is lucky out there. The Barbie movie just popped, so all the Barbs uh, was quick to come to her aid on social media and talk up for Nicki. And whenever you have Nicki, usually you also have Cardi. So we also have a Cardi story right now talking about at her concert where she may face charges. So I don't know if you saw the video. We're gonna find the video right now and show it to you. But basically, Cardi B was performing at a concert, and a fan threw a drink on her. So Cardi B reacted. So I want to see if we could find that um, for you real quick. And if we can, I got it up. I got it up. Give me 1 second. So let's do it.
And Cardi B's recent trip to Vegas was eventful, to say the least. We're now learning, though, she threw her mic in frustration not once, but twice.
So now she was in the nightclub, and someone threw a drink, and she threw the microphone at the person in the stands. So she told the people not to to splash her to cool her down, but someone at a later time threw a drink on her, so she reacted. She was upset, and let's see, we have that footage as well. We're gonna go ahead and share that as well. Y'all gotta bear with me. I'm still getting used to sharing all these videos and stuff, but we're good. We're good. So here we go. So there you go. You can see her reacting right there. You saw security jump out into the stands, but Cardi was not one to be throwing stuff at. Apparently, she doesn't appreciate that. So yeah, now they're saying she may face some charges, a battery charge for throwing the mic, but I mean it's not necessarily self defense, but it is kind of clear that she was provoked. So hopefully she's not charged for that. It's a little silly, but I will say she also could be a good left hand pitcher for somebody's softball team, Major League Baseball team, because she definitely connected with that fan who threw that item at her. So we're going to stick in this, and we're very heavy on stories about the ladies this week. Not intentional, but there's a lot going on with the ladies. So we're going to go uh, from the from the from what is it the from Nicki Minaj to Cardi B. Now we're with Beyonce. So, and it's not directly a story about Beyonce, but it's a sad story. One of her fans was attacked after her concert. His name is Oshaz Sibley. He was 28 years old, and he was attacked at a gas station for voguing um, while performing to Beyonce's music in Coney Island on Saturday night. They had the concert out there in the New York, New Jersey area, and apparently he was attacked. So there was a group of guys. They were screaming apparently that they were Muslim and they don't like gays. And his friend said as they were innocently pumping gas, oh excuse me, the Muslims said as we were innocently pumping gas, y'all decided to stab on one of us. So it's crazy. But the murder was caught on camera, as you can see of a still shot of the camera here. Um, and this is definitely sounding like a hate crime against gays. Um, the video shows there were four shirtless black and Hispanic men gassing their car up, and another group standing outside of the convenience store starts jawing at them. The police arrive, but Mr. Sibley unfortunately didn't make it. No arrests so far have been made, but the, they are currently looking for a young man in his late teens. Beyonce appropriately honored the fan who was killed at her concert and on her website following the incident. So obviously, Beyonce has nothing to do with it directly, but she did acknowledge her fan. Very sad story, very crazy reason to kill somebody. It's caught on camera. They're definitely going to catch whoever did that, I'm sure. And when they do, they're going to make an example out of them because I mean, literally, it doesn't sound like anything was done by Mr. Sibley to any of the individuals who attacked him and killed him. So this week we have another story featuring our dope black lawyer of the day. I think this might be a second time, but Ben Crump. He represented the family of Henrietta Lacks, who if you know the story, her cells were taken without her knowledge and used in science and medicine for years. So her family, her estate, accused the biotechnology company of making billions of dollars with her cells, and they reached a settlement with the company. So tissue taken from her tumor before she died of cervical cancer became the first human cells to continuously grow and reproduce in lab dishes. So they went on to become called HeLa cells, the first two letters of her name, Henrietta Lacks. Went on to become the cornerstone of modern medicine. Countless scientific and medical innovations were developed, including the polio vaccine, genetic mapping, and some of them were even used for COVID-19 vaccines. So her family, up till now, had not received a dime for it. Her cells were harvested when it wasn't illegal to do so in 1951, but they used them for commercial purposes. And now attorney Ben Crump has worked with his team to settle this case. In cases like this, naturally, not surprisingly, the terms are confidential, but representatives from both parties said that they're pleased to have the matter resolved. Miss Lax died actually only at the age of 31. She was in the colored ward of Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is known now to be one of the top hospitals and medical schools in the country. It's in Baltimore, Maryland, and she was buried in an unmarked grave. Johns Hopkins said it never sold or profited from the cell lines, but many companies have patented ways of using them. She was a poor tobacco farmer from Virginia, and her and her husband were raising 5 kids when a tumor was discovered in her cervix. So justice delayed is not necessarily justice denied. I'm so glad to hear that her family has been compensated. There's a really good movie on HBO about her life that you can check out on HBO Max or on regular HBO or whatever. But an amazing, an amazing life that continued even after her death, and just glad to see that her family is being compensated. So we have a lot to talk about today. So I do want to acknowledge Miss Lax, but I do also want to move on to another story. If you remember, about a year ago, the 3 young girls that you see on the screen were found dead. It was believed that they had drowned. The girls, Ziariel Oliver, Amaya Hughes, and Tamari Oliver, were found in a pond, but it has just come to be known that um, the DA has announced that the girls actually were strangled to death before being dumped in the water, which would lead us to believe that there was some type of homicide and foul play involved here. So the young lady's mother is Shamanique Oliver, and she gave an interview recently, and she said that she just really wants answers. She wants to know what happened. While she was at work, she left her kids in the care of her cousin, a 28-year-old man. At some point while he was watching the girls, he called her from a neighbor's phone stating that they were missing, but he hasn't said very much since. He was his mother has told him not to speak, so Shamanique's aunt has told him not to speak, and Shamanique just wants to know. She said, "Why won't she let him talk to the police or take him down to the police? All I want is justice for my babies." Shamanique's having a hard time. She's been called a deadbeat. People are making it hard for her to work. She's also still dealing with the grief of what happened, and she's been relying on. She's designed and sold T-shirts and a GoFundMe, which in a year has only raised $23,000. So think about that in comparison to the guy who killed the Michael Jackson impersonator in New York City, where his GoFundMe was over $1 million in like a few days, maybe a week at the most. So unfortunately, she's having a hard time. But the DA said that investigators have interviewed numerous witnesses. They're doing DNA testing. Of course, they don't have suspects, and no motive for the triple homicide has been revealed. But the investigation is going on. We don't know what's to blame, but it does sound a little fishy that the mother of Shamanique's cousin is telling him not to speak out. But I hope that there is some type of closure and justice for that family. And we're moving on to the part of the show that we're now going to be calling Karen's Gone Crazy. Crazy. All right. So the first story happened in Alabama, and the headline is Black woman recovering after being shot in the face by a white driver in road rage incident. So in Alabama, a black woman was shot. Her name is Altavice McLeod, multiple times, including in her face by 36-year-old Rebecca Armstrong. This happened actually July 19th in Moody, Alabama. Right around 5 p.m., she was driving home from work at the same hospital where she ended up going back to after she was shot. Cars were stopped, and Miss McLeod um, approached Altavice's vehicle, and she said that Altavice was following her. She accused her angrily of following her. So she said, "You've been following me for days." And Altavice said, "I don't know you, ma'am. I don't know what you're talking about." So she said she looked down at her purse, and when she looked back over to her, that's when she saw the barrel and her gun. And then she said she was beating on the window with the gun. And Altavice says she looked at the barrel, I looked straight and was like, "Oh my God, I don't know you, ma'am," because she's just screaming and screaming at her. So as the situation escalated, the enraged woman fired multiple shots into Altavisa's vehicle, which struck her in the head. There was a bullet that went through her hand and traveled up her body. She was shot, but she is in stable condition at this point. Authorities took Armstrong into custody and charged her with aggravated assault, attempted murder, um, discharging a firearm into an occupied vehicle, and reckless endangerment. So now she is currently being held without bond. Also down south, not too far from here, we got this Karen here whose name is actually Suzanne Kraft. This is in Louisville, Kentucky, a 54-year-old woman. She was sentenced to 9 years following 3 years of supervised release for sending threatening letters to neighbors um, in Lake Forest, which is east of Jefferson County, Kentucky, um, seemingly only because these people were not white. So back in 2020, she had mailed numerous threats of violence and racial slurs to an interracial couple and their children who lived in her neighborhood. She was convicted and she was given the Karen sentence the first time of house arrest for 7 days, sentenced to 7 days of home incarceration. So you just do your jail at the crib, apparently, if you're a Karen. So so shortly thereafter, not even I don't even think after she had finished her house arrest, but she sent more envelopes containing racial slurs and also bullets. Um, so this time the judge did not slap her on the wrist. She got 9 years, and you know she is a menace to society. But luckily, she'll be away for a while and won't be able to invoke this type of violence on any other interracial or black couples or anybody else. So down in Mississippi, we have this brother. So so his name is Shun Kendrick Huffman. He's 21 years old, and he was months away from being released from a 7-year sentence. Um, who escaped from jail or from prison, and when he escaped, he ended up going and kidnapping a homeowner and two of their daughters for hours, and then he stole their car and ended up hiding out at an apartment that was not too far from the campus of Mississippi State University, where the police found him in the dumpster. So, very sad story. I mean, Shun Kendrick is only 21 right now, so to have been getting ready to complete a 7-year sentence for aggravated assault, I mean, the system already just did this brother kind of bad. So at 14, 15 years old, he was facing that kind of time, and unfortunately, this bad decision is going to lead to him doing 40 more years in state prison for the kidnapping and false imprisonment charges is that he is now facing, or that he pled guilty to. So, very sad situation. I feel bad for everybody involved, including Kendrick, the people who he held at gunpoint. It's very sad. The system that we have in America really is not made for black men or black women to be able to succeed, and many of us do in spite of that. But this brother right here, I'm sure if you look into his background, there's probably more to it than we even know. And he's 21, so even if he only was, forced to do half of that sentence, he would be 41 years old when he got out of prison, and that would have been more than 3/4 of his life at that point, right? So, or maybe 2/3. I don't want to get into math. That's on here. That's why I'm a lawyer and not an engineer or something like that. But very sad story. I hope that he is rehabilitated and able to come out of there at some point and still have some productivity with his life. Um, so we made it. This is what we are here to talk about. So I'll give you the rundown. Um, But we're going to spend a little time here because there's a 40-page complaint that I want to kind of go through and kind of let you know, because you've probably heard some of the things about this, but there's some very interesting details that I think you're going to want to hear and that are going to matter. So, um, give me a little second. So, Lizzo, along with her production touring company and her head dancer, are being sued um, for for several things, including sexual assault, creating a hostile work environment, false imprisonment, and assault. So the lawsuit says that Lizzo pressured the dancers to engage with new performers at a club in Amsterdam, shamed one of them for a weight gain before firing her, and the plaintiffs in this case are named Ariana Davis, Crystal Williams, and Noel Rodriguez. So they're also claiming that there was disability discrimination, religious harassment. We talked about the racial harassment, sexual harassment. So there's a lot going on here. So the plaintiff. So we're just gonna go through. It's crazy because you already know Lizzo's whole thing is like body positivity for the plus size ladies, and it seems like she's not really living what she preaches behind closed doors. So, um, so one of the ladies was fired for her weight gain and not recording a meeting where Lizzo was giving out notes to dancers about their performances. Charlene Quigley is the team dance captain, who was a former judge of the series reality series Lizzo's Watch Out for the Big Girls. Um, and she's accused of pushing Christian beliefs on everybody. So we're going to go into detail. We're going to talk about all of these things. Lizzo released a statement saying that these last few days have been gut-wrenchingly difficult, overwhelmingly disappointing. My work ethic, morals, and respectfulness have been questioned. My character has been criticized. Usually, I choose not to respond to false allegations, but these are as unbelievable as they sound and too outrageous not to be addressed. So I haven't seen any evidence to show that these allegations are true. So Lizzo's saying they're not true, but whether they're true or not, they're wild. So we're going to dive into this complaint like we've done on some other cases in the past. And we're going to kind of talk about and break down what this stuff means. So this complaint I got online off of Deadline. And as you can see, we'll start at the top like we usually do. So in California, they have this style with the numbers on the side to number the paragraphs. So it tells you who's filing. These are the lawyers for the plaintiffs, West Coast employment lawyers, no dope black lawyers. We did check at that firm. And they represent Crystal Williams, Ariana Davis, and Noel Rodriguez um, against Big Girl, Big Touring Inc., which is Melissa Jefferson, who is Lizzo, and Charlene Quigley. So they also list does 1 through 10, which is kind of like a form thing they do in California. It seems I've seen that on a lot of complaints, but it's also used when like there's a defendant who you don't know their name yet. So once you find out the name, you may amend the complaint to add their name. And then the charges that the complaint that is asking for damages for a hostile work environment, sexual harassment. So all plaintiffs against all defendants are claiming that. Then you've got FEHA, failure to prevent and or remedy hostile work environment, sexual harassment, and that's all plaintiffs against all defendants. And then you've got religious harassment, all plaintiffs against Charlene Quigley and Big Girl, Big Touring Inc. Am I saying that right, girl? So anyway, Lizzo's not being accused of religious harassment, so she's the only defendant who's not. All defendants are being accused by all plaintiffs for failure to prevent and or remedy religious harassment. Um, they're also charging all defendants with racial harassment, disability discrimination, which is only plaintiff Davis against Big Girl Touring and Lizzo. Intentional interference to prospective economic advantage. It's all plaintiffs against Big Girl Big Touring. Assault. So plaintiffs Rodriguez and Davis are alleging assault against defendant Lizzo, and false imprisonment. Plaintiff Davis is alleging that against Big Girl Big Touring Inc. So we'll go through and we'll talk about this a little bit in detail. So um, we're going to skip the parties and all that. We kind of talked about that, but the factual allegations are kind of wild. So, uh, like we said, this is a case where three professional dancers were working for Big Girl Touring. Their names are um, Big Girl Touring and Lizzo. So throughout their employment, plaintiffs Davis, Williams, and Rodriguez were subjected to a host of violations of California law. So in March of 21, they were introduced to Lizzo when they were contestants on her show. And the show was called Watch Out for the Big Girls, which was released on Amazon Prime Video. So the prize was an opportunity to join Lizzo as a dancer in her live performances. So, as an aside, Miss Davis was required to take a psychological examination to make sure she was psychologically healthy enough to endure the strain of filming the television show. And it was disclosed that she suffered with anxiety and depression, which occasionally result in binge eating. So they were aware of this, this information was known by the production because there was a waiver of privilege of confidentiality that she signed. So in May of 2021, Rodriguez was hired by Lizzo and Big Girl in touring. She was brought in to perform for one video, but remained with Lizzo as a part of the dance group in her live concert as well. So she had another opportunity to work for one day, but she was not able to take the opportunity. According to the complaint, her tour manager says that if you want the job with Lizzo, you need to turn that down. So she was booked by Lizzo. She worked at several other places. Um, and now August of 2021, so this started in March of 2021. Now we're 5 months later. During the filming of the show, Miss Davis and Miss Williams were first introduced to the defendant, Charlene Quigley, who was one of the judges and instructors on the show and was also the captain of Lizzo's dance team. So Miss Quigley apparently is very vocal about her Christian religious beliefs, and she took the opportunity to try to convert, you know, everybody in her presence. She was not ashamed, or she did not hold back when it came to expressing her religious views. And during the filming, Miss Quigley discovered that Miss Davis was a virgin, and this virginity became a topic of extreme importance to Quigley. So she would bring it up, she would talk about it, and she posted about it on social media. Miss Davis says she never gave Miss Quigley permission to share this private detail of her life. So another thing, as a condition of the competition, watch out for the Big Girl contestants were told that they would be required to participate in a nude photo shoot. So some people didn't mind. Miss Davis says that this caused her to be distressed. And remember, Miss Davis is the young lady with the anxiety and depression. So um, she says she believes that poor performance or outright refusal would have resulted in being sent home. Um, so she went ahead and went along with the nude photography to make sure that she could have a better chance of earning a spot on this tour with Lizzo. So she says that it caused her anxiety to flare, resulting in extreme distress, saying she broke down in tears. And she did participate in the photo shoot partially clothed in a nude bra and underwear. However, this experience foreshadowed the sexually charged and uncomfortable environment Lizzo's employees would be forced to endure. So the show ended in September of 2021. And Davis and Williams were both selected to be a part of the dance cast for the tour that Lizzo had coming up. And And then all three plaintiffs, including Ms. Rodriguez, performed with Lizzo at her festival appearances from September 2021 through April 2022. So now we're at April 2022, okay? And the plaintiffs had began rehearsing in preparation for Lizzo's special tour. During this time, they had worked closely with Miss Quigley, who was the captain of the dance team. So she continued to preach at everybody, and she was talking about her beliefs in Christianity and what she believed regarding sexuality, um, as well as just giving people a lot of information about her life. So you can see here, she says, Ms. Quigley often made comments about people who engage in premarital sex, knowing that some members of the dance cast did not share her views. Ms. Quigley also had a party trick in which she would simulate oral sex on a banana in front of the rest of the dance cast. These instances were always unprompted and made plaintiffs uncomfortable. All right. So Ms. Quigley's sexually inappropriate behavior did not stop at fake fellatio. Despite her staunch beliefs in opposition to premarital sex, she had no problem sharing her masturbatory habits with the dance cast, often stating things to the effect that masturbating is against my religion, but I had an oopsie. Miss Quigley's sexually explicit comments were so pervasive, the entire dance team knew about her sexual fantasy of having 10 penises in her face. So they're trying to paint this picture, and they're doing a pretty good job of painting a picture of how Miss Quigley's um, discussion of sex made everyone uncomfortable. How she was very adamant about professing her religious beliefs, which also seemed possibly made them uncomfortable. But let's continue. Similar to Miss Quigley's constant sexually inappropriate comments, Miss Quigley's ministering to plaintiffs was unceasing. Quigley continued to keep tabs on Davis's virginity and made it clear Miss Quigley thought the only way one could be a proper Christian was through similar abstinence. She also singled out Rodriguez, who was a non believer, and made it her mission to preach at Miss Rodriguez. So, you know, everybody believes something, even if it's that they don't believe anything. And everyone is entitled to these beliefs in America, but they're saying Miss Quigley would go on and on. So they say she interrogated Miss Davis about her religious beliefs while in the dressing room. Um, in advance of a show, Miss Quigley began stating her beliefs and asked Miss Davis if she felt the same. When Miss Davis expressed a different belief than Miss Quigley, Quigley became visibly upset and making it abundantly clear she expected total conformity to Miss Quigley's dogma. So while Miss Quigley was for sure the most extreme in her religious convictions, her sentiments were softly echoed by others in supervisory roles at BGBT, which is the touring company. Before rehearsals and performances, the team would pray together, and it was not an official requirement, but it became clear that engagement was mandatory. So Miss Rodriguez, again, not a believer, she would politely decline to pray, but Miss Quigley continued to pressure her to participate. So this made Miss Rodriguez feel judged. So Miss Rodriguez was struck by Miss Quigley's insistence on overstepping. So Miss Rodriguez took her concerns to the assistant choreographer, Melissa Charlotte. Charlotte showed some empathy for Miss Rodriguez's concerns, but merely suggested Rodriguez take her complaints to Miss Quigley herself. A wholly useless tactic, raising concerns with Miss Quigley had never proven productive. So you can imagine that someone like Miss Quigley is not going to be the type of person who you can just go to and get her to understand your point of view if as she is described in this complaint. So I can understand where one would be hesitant based on what they're alleging to ever do that. Okay? So so now there are some interactions with the drivers. So Miss Williams claims that she was brushed up against by one of the tour bus drivers, and the driver said, quote, "You can back up on me again," implying that his that Miss Williams' accidental touch gave him sexual gratification. A different driver was known for playing sexually explicit songs on the tour bus. These interactions made the dance cast incredibly uncomfortable and in fear for their safety. Davis and Rodriguez reported the driver's inappropriate behavior, but the touring company did nothing. They merely questioned whether the drivers were drunk and or driving safely. So long as they're not drinking or driving in a reckless manner, they're alleging that the touring company didn't really care about the inappropriate behavior. So now here is where we're talking about the intentional infliction of keeping them from being able to work other places. So once the domestic part of the tour was about to end, there was a gap in time before the the European leg would start. So it ended in November. It wouldn't start back again until February, which is a couple of months. The plaintiffs were told that they could not find other work, but they also would not get paid, and that if they did work, that they would be replaced. So they found out that other people on the tour, the the musicians and others, were getting a portion of their tour rate while on break in exchange for not taking other jobs. They weren't given that opportunity, and they said they were only ever given 2 weeks advance notice that they were booked for tour performances. So because of the fact that the performances were not being told to them in enough advance, they would always be not know when they could work and not take other jobs and not take other jobs, which they're alleging is an intentional way of keeping them dependent on the tour. So on or about February 7th, the plaintiffs arrived in London to start rehearsals um, for the Brit Awards show. On February 23rd, the plaintiffs performed with Lizzo in Amsterdam. After the show, Lizzo invited the dancers out with her on the town. These invitations were not unusual, and attendance was not mandatory, but it was well known that dance cast members were expected to endear themselves to Lizzo. Lizzo often mentioned that she had eyes and ears everywhere and only wanted good people with good energy around her. Those who attended after party events planned were often favored, selected to perform with Lizzo at outside shows, and were considered to enjoy greater job security. So on that particular evening, Lizzo sent out an invitation through her close friend, a member of the cast, Shantae, and Miss Davis and Miss Rodriguez were out at dinner celebrating the birthday of one of the supporting vocal performers when they received the invitation. So Shantae made them making a decision to accept or decline, feeling that they had to. They decided to go. So as it turns out, Lizzo had planned a night out in Amsterdam's notorious red light district. So I don't know. I've never been there, but I kind of have an idea of what it must be like. And for this young lady who's a virgin, it might be a lot. But the district is known for its abundance of sex theaters, sex shops, clubs, and bars where nudity is on full display. The main event of the night was a club called Banana Bar, where patrons are allowed to interact with completely new performers. When the plaintiffs expressed misgivings about the plans for the night, Shantae stated that it was too late to back out because Lizzo had already sent out the head count for the evening. So, feeling pressure for their job security, um, they went along for the ride. So while at the Banana in bar, things got out of hand. Lizzo began inviting cast members to take turns touching the new performers, catching dildos launched from the performers' vaginas, and eating bananas protruding from the performers' vaginas. Lizzo then turned her attention to Miss Davis and began pressuring Miss Davis to touch the breasts of one of the new women performing at the club. Lizzo began leading a chant, goading Miss Davis. Miss Davis said 3 times, loud enough for all to hear, "I'm good," expressing that she did not want to touch the performer. The chant grew louder and more strident, demanding a visibly uncomfortable Miss Davis to engage with the performer. Miss Davis reiterated her discomfort and said she'd rather not because I'm cool in here in the corner. So finally, that the chants got louder and louder, and finally to stop it, Miss Davis did what they wanted her to do and touch the performer. She touched the performer's breast. The group burst into laughter. Miss Davis abashedly laughed along, trying to hide how uncomfortable this interaction made her. Her effort to conceal the discomfort was not successful, as on separate occasions, the tour management and Lizzo's security team asked if she was okay. Ms. Davis replied kind of to one request and no to the other. So they're making it seem like she had no choice but to do these things. In addition to pressuring her into this interaction, the plaintiffs, in all intents, were unable to avoid witnessing Lizzo's incredibly public displays of sexual affection with her boyfriend. At one point, the couple exuberantly took Shantae and two members of the band, which performed with Lizzo on a tour, to a back room before returning sometime later. So, upon return, Lizzo began to pressure a member of her security team to participate in the night's debauchery. Lizzo badgered the security guard to get on the club's stage until he submitted to her demands. When he got on the stage, his pants were pulled down, exposing his butt. Lizzo then was yelling, "Take it off," while a club performer hit the security guard with whips. Plaintiffs were aghast at with how little regard Lizzo showed for the bodily autonomy of her employees and those around her, especially in the presence of many people whom she employed. So now in March, they've made it to Paris, and it seems like it hasn't stopped. But these allegations are out of this world. I mean, taking people to a club and making them to touch people is a lot, right? So now we're in Paris in March, and again, she's inviting the dancers out. She told them they're going to go to Crazy Horse, which is a place where they would hear live, where there would be live dancers performing, that they could learn something or be inspired by the performance. But what she failed to mention was that this performance was at a nude cabaret bar. So, so not until the curtain opened and nude women began to dance on the stage did the plaintiffs know what they were in store for. Not only were plaintiffs under the same pressures before to go out with Lizzo, but this time the fact that they would be attending a show where nudity was prominently featured was hidden from them. They were completely surprised by this, and the show at the Crazy Horse was artful and nowhere near as uncomfortable as the other club. Plaintiffs were shocked that Lizzo concealed the nature, robbing them of the choice to not participate. So, a few days later, the dance team submitted their request to the touring company and Lizzo for a retainer of 50% of their weekly tour rate to ensure they would be paid for their time while on break from touring, since um, it was preferred that they not work. So, so about a week later, the last show of the European leg of the tour was played. Before the show, the touring accountant, Ashley Joshi, sent an email responding to the dancers' retainer request. In the email, she offered a retainer of 25% of the dancers' weekly tour rate, exactly half of what the dancers requested. Additionally, she took the opportunity to scold the dancers for unacceptable and disrespectful behavior while on tour, stating that it was cause for termination. Nowhere in the email did she explain what she deemed to be unacceptable or disrespectful. So the cast compromised, only the dance cast comprised of full figure women of color were ever spoken to in this manner, giving plaintiffs the impression that these comments were charged with racial and fat phobic animus. This email marked the beginning of a strained relationship between the dancers and management. So it's wild to me that this is what marked the beginning of a strained relationship between the dancers and management, with all these other allegations. So let's continue. The plaintiffs and fellow dancers were blindsided by the allegations of the emails, and requested a meeting with Kevin Beasler, but he stated he had no time. And back in the U.S., they were placed again on a soft hold. So this is when they got back. So now they can't work again. But on April 24th, the dancers were able to agree to a 50% retainer. Unfortunately, despite the advances the dancers made in obtaining a retainer, it became clear that BGT management began to lash out at the dancers. So management treated the black members of the dance team differently than other members. Management team consisted almost entirely of white Europeans who often accused black members of the team of being lazy, unprofessional, and having bad attitudes. So not only do these words ring familiar as tropes used to disparage and discourage black women from advocating for themselves, but the same accusations were not levied against dancers who are not black. As an aside, I find it kind of ironic that these black women went to a law firm that does not have any black women who work there. Um, but that's not here nor there. So I'm sure this law firm is full of competent lawyers who are able to, do the job. But I'm equally sure, and probably even more sure, because I know them personally, that there are black women who handle these types of cases that get top results. But nevertheless, later on in April, the dance cast was scheduled for an 8-hour rehearsal. Near the end of the rehearsal, Lizzo called the dance cast together for a meeting to address the rumors of unprofessionalism. Lizzo stated that the dancers were not performing up to par and repeatedly accused the dancers of drinking alcohol before the shows, even though the dance cast had never done so. Lizzo then stated that all the dancers would be required to re-audition for their spots, and if Lizzo was dissatisfied, the dancers would be fired and sent home. What followed was an excruciating re-audition in which the dancers repeatedly ran through the entire 90-minute show. What was supposed to be an 8-hour rehearsal was extended to almost 12 hours. And an 8-hour rehearsal, to me, sounds like it's already excruciating. I couldn't imagine a 12-hour rehearsal for dancing. But um, the dancers stated that the re-audition was brutal. They were not allowed to take a break. During the run through of the show, Miss Davis felt she needed to excuse herself to use the restroom. However, she was afraid that she left the stage at any point, she would be fired. Miss Davis was pressed on as long as she could, till eventually she lost control of her bladder. Still fearing the repercussions of exiting the stage, Miss Davis remained on stage, dancing in soiled clothes until there was a brief segment of the show where the dance cast was not part of the onstage performances and were allowed a short break. Miss Davis was embarrassed and hurried backstage to change into clean clothes. Unfortunately, the only thing available to her was a see-through garment provided by the wardrobe department, making her feel exposed and even more embarrassed. Miss Davis was required to finish the rehearsal dancing in front of male crew members who were known to sexualize the dancers under less revealing scenarios while wearing completely transparent shorts with no undergarments. So after the rehearsal was over, nothing was said to the dancers, but they were left with the impression that they were to show up the next day. So the next day, Lizzo called another meeting with the dance cast to reiterate that none of their jobs are safe. Once again, she mentioned that thing about drinking alcohol and says that this was not based on any sort of reality. So they say this was not true at all. Ms. Williams raised her hand and asked to speak. She went on to rebut Lizzo's accusation about drinking on the job, stating the dancers had never drank prior to shows. Ms. Quigley immediately supported Ms. Williams, confirming that the dancers had never drank before the shows. Lizzo mockingly responded, "Well, if you're not, then good for y'all." Then stated that maybe the accusations of drinking before shows were on account of dancers' poor performance. So this sounds like hazing to me. So I don't know. It sounds like Lizzo's just kind of, if you take these allegations to be true, the way that they have been alleged, as though she's just, kind of bullying them and, kind of doing a little haze for these dancers. So Ms. Davis was called into a private meeting with Lizzo and the choreographer Tanisha Scott. Lizzo and Tanisha questioned her about whether or not she was struggling with something else, and she seemed less committed. Lizzo and Miss Scott pressed her for an explanation as to why she seemed less bubbly and vivacious than she did prior to the tour. So in professional dance, a dancer's weight is often seen as the dancer getting lazy or worse off as a performer. So gaining weight is kind of looked at as a dancer being lazy. So Lizzo and Miss Scott's comments were thinly veiled concerns about her weight gain, which had previously called attention to after noticing it at South by Southwest. So they've been talking about her weight a little bit here and there, but now they came straight to her with it. So Miss Davis told him that she was dealing with personal issues, but did not think that it would affect her work. She also said that she did not believe that her performance slipped, but that she had become a better dancer than when she was hired. So as it continued to press, um, she, she finally bent to their demands, and and Lizzo and Miss Scott never explicitly stated that these questions, accompanied by Lizzo's statements made after the South by Southwest Music Festival, gave Miss Davis the impression that she needed to explain her weight gain and disclose intimate personal details about her life in order to keep her job. So She shared that she had been struggling with anxiety and depression and has been diagnosed with binge eating disorder. She explained her diagnosis and struggles, but made it clear that in spite of her mental health struggles, she was still committed to the tour and performing to the top of her capabilities. Um, so, in response, they dismissively offered um, t- time off to attend therapy. So, Miss Davis thought this seemed strange, and she felt like if she accepted the time off, that she would be seen as too weak to continue as a member of the dance cast. So she declined, thinking it was the only way to keep her job, thinking that this was like a test or something, is what it seems like. So she was hurt and emotionally drained by being forced to tell her employers about her personal struggles. So she went out, but she still went out to perform that night. About 5 days later, she was terminated in the lobby of the hotel the dancers were staying at by Miss Gugliotta under the guise of budget cuts. Miss Williams was the only dancer to get fired on this day. Stunned, Miss Williams asked to speak to Lizzo. Miss Gugliotta responded, telling Miss Williams that Lizzo isn't the best with these things and she has a lot going on. So she insisted to speak with Lizzo, and and uh, and the other plaintiff. So we've been only dealing with Miss Williams for quite a while. I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit, but um, now Miss Rodriguez spoke to Miss Gugliotta, expressing disagreement with the decision to publicly terminate Miss Williams. Miss Gugliotta responded that it had to be done, and stated, "We've never had any problems with you." So on April 27th, all the dancers were called into a meeting with Lizzo to discuss notes on how they had been dancing. Prior to discussing performances, Lizzo addressed Miss Williams being fired. During the meeting, Lizzo stated she had heard that one of the dancers questioned why Lizzo hadn't fired Miss Williams directly. Lizzo repeatedly demanded to know who questioned her, and once again reminded the dance cast that she had eyes and ears everywhere. Lizzo also stated her preference that the dance cast refrain from socializing with Miss Williams before Miss Williams left New Orleans, where the tour was performing that night. Afterward, Lizzo gave the group performance notes. Miss Davis, who suffers from an eye condition, which Lizzo and the touring company were aware of, sometimes becomes disoriented in stressful situations as a result of the condition. Accordingly, Miss Davis has a habit of making audio recordings of stressful interactions so she can review them in less stressful situations. So, so she made notes with the intent of the meeting um, with Lizzo to provide performance notes that could be crucial to the dancer's employment. Ms. Davis recorded the meeting so she could review it later on. So that sounds like they're explaining why she may have um, taken a first party, a one party recording without notifying the other party. I think we've talked about it before, but in a lot of states, it's legal to record if both parties don't know that the recording is happening. But um, in a handful of states, it is not legal. And in Florida, in fact, it's a felony to record somebody without their knowledge. So that seems like why they would tell you that fact. But all of the stuff that they're talking about right now is kind of painting a picture for the disability claim that they're making. So saying that they knew about her disabilities, they knew that she had this eye condition. So so now Lizzo is stating that she knew that one of the dancers recorded their meeting on April 27, 2023. And Lizzo became furious, hurling expletives at the group, saying that she was going to go around the room person by person until someone told who recorded. So Miss Davis admitted that she recorded it. All right. So and gave an explanation for why she recorded it. So Lizzo is saying there's nothing you can say that would make me believe you. They, Quigley and Lizzo took turns berating her and fired her on the spot. So now, of the three plaintiffs, the only one left is Miss Rodriguez. So before Lizzo left, Rodriguez asked if she could have a word with Lizzo. Uh, she explained that she did not appreciate how Lizzo handled the situation with Miss Davis and that Miss Rodriguez felt disrespected and therefore would resign. This resignation drew both Quigley and Lizzo's ire. Miss Quigley screamed at Rodriguez and Miss Davis, calling them disrespectful. Lizzo aggressively approached Miss Rodriguez, crackling her knuckles, balling her fists, and exclaiming, "You're lucky. You're so effing lucky." Miss Rodriguez feared that Lizzo intended to hit her and would have done so if one of the other dancers had not intervened. Neither security nor management did anything to de escalate the situation. As Lizzo left the room, she raised her middle fingers and yelled, "Bye, B." Um, so Rodriguez then returned to her hotel room, escorted by three other dancers, as they all feared Lizzo may return trying to hurt Rodriguez, packed her things, and prepared to leave. So Davis was forced to stay behind, detained in the room where the meeting had taken place by a member of Lizzo's security detail referred to as Robo. Molly Gordon, the special tours co-manager, demanded that Davis let Robo rifle through the files on Miss Davis's phone and in her iCloud while Miss Gordon watched, even though Ms. Davis had already explained she had deleted the recording days earlier. Davis was told she was not allowed to leave until her phone had been searched. Davis was scared and wanted nothing more than to leave the area. Therefore, assented to her phone being searched. A thorough search confirmed Davis' assertion that she'd already deleted the files. After finally being released from her confinement, Ms. Davis hurried to her hotel room, packed her stuff, and left for the airport. So that's what happened. That's the long version of what they're alleging happened. And then they have I think there's 7 different counts for the, there's 9 different counts for the complaint. And they're looking to get money. So this is a lawsuit for monetary damages. So in order to get those monetary damages, they have to prove um, any of these elements. If they can prove, the jury would then award an amount for what they could receive as compensation for that particular count. So they don't have to prove them all. They can prove some and not others. They could um, be found to have not proven any and get nothing. So if that's the case, they would get nothing. So um, so we're going to go through a couple of the counts now that we have um, now that we have kind of explained what happened. It's a wild story. I mean, for you to be a part of a company called Big Girl Touring, where you came through on a show called Watch Out for the Big Girls, dancing for one of the biggest singers in the industry. Um, it's a little bit ironic that being big would be held against you. So, like, even if, as you can see in this picture, like all these ladies are big. So I don't understand um, what the issue is. So, but anyway, so let's just kind of go through. Uh, so to win for a hostile work environment and regarding sexual harassment in California, they would have to be able to show that they were a protected member of a member of a protected class, such as race, sex, or religion, that they were subjected to unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other conduct of a sexual nature. So they did have some allegations that were sexual in nature, making them touch people's body parts, having us strip nude, um, nothing being done when they accidentally touched the uh, the driver playing sexually explicit music. Um, so then they'd have to show that the conduct was based on their sex and that the conduct was severe or pervasive enough to create a hostile work environment and affected their employment. So that's the that's what they'll have to show to win for a sexual harassment claim. Um, Now, with regard to the disability claim, it's similar. So they'd have to show they have a disability as defined by FEHA, and that's the act in California, Employment Act in California, that that um, they're filing most of these allegations under. They would have to show that they're qualified to perform the essential functions of their job with or without a reasonable accommodation. So, a reasonable accommodation is something that is given to you if you have like a some type of disability to assist you in being able to do your job or whatever. So sometimes, like if you think about like in a school setting, people who have like ADHD are given additional time to be able to take a test, or um, in a housing situation, you may, let's say you can't get into your bathtub, they may have to put in like a ramp or something so that you can access the bathtub. Not a ramp, but a walk-in tub or something like that. Um, so so let's see. Next we have. I'm going to try to run through this. I don't want to hold you too long. But next we have. Um, oh, okay. We actually skipped one, but the other one is religious harassment. So that would be similar, that you were a member of a religious group, that you were a member of a protected class, and that you were subjected to unwelcome conduct based on religion. So all of those claims about not being a Christian or having to do things because of someone's Christianity, and you're not, you don't want those, that type of interaction. And you would say it created a hostile work environment, making you pray, making you feel guilty for not being a part of the religion or not living up to the religion, and saying that it would affect your employment. All right. So we're gonna keep going. So now we're talking about intentional interference with prospective economic advantage. So this is where the plaintiff has an economic relationship with a third party that the defendant knew of and intentionally interfered with the economic relationship. The interference was a substantial factor in the loss of the economic relationship, and the plaintiff suffered damages as a result of the interference. So basically, all these allegations saying that they were not able to take these other jobs because they were working on this tour with Lizzo, and even though they weren't technically working, they couldn't take the work. That's what they're going to have to show for that. And also for the assault charge, the plaintiff's going to have to show that the defendant had an intent to cause harmful or offensive contact, that the defendant's actions created a reasonable apprehension of harmful or offensive contact. So the defendant actually did something that led to the contact, or that they should have known would have led to the contact. Um, and the plaintiff suffered actual or threatened harmful or offensive contact. So you actually had an injury from the contact. So that's what they're going to have to show. Or she didn't actually hit her, but um, you know, she may be trying to show that there's some type of emotional situation. And last, the one plaintiff is alleging that she was imprisoned falsely. So she has to show that the defendant intentionally restrained her, that it was not lawful, that the plaintiff did not consent to it, and that suffered damage as a result of the restraint. So, you know, it's not going to be necessarily an easy case. They're going to have to prove these things. Um, so, some of the things that they're going to have to prove it is their own testimony, witnesses, um, text messages, emails, documents. Maybe there's some video footage, um, and things of that nature. So they're going to have to prove that. So I imagine that a lot of these women who are still working with Lizzo, it's going to be hard to get them to break away because they're probably afraid for their own job safety. But that's what they are going to have to do. And, you know, it's a wild story. It's going to come out. I'm sure more information is going to come out as it comes out. We are going to keep you posted. But let's move on, because we did spend a lot of time talking about that story. But it's a very big story in the news right now. And we want to make sure that people know what's going on. So now we're going to go back to a story that we covered before. If you remember, there was a little girl. She was burned while after her mom took her to McDonald's in Broward County. A chicken nugget that dropped was so hot that when it got stuck in between her seatbelt, um, it burned her. So you can see the burn right there. There was a jury that previously said that McDonald's franchise was liable, and then there was a second trial only to determine how much they would be liable for. So it's kind of interesting. The family's attorney asked for $15 million. So the defense attorney believed that the damages should have been limited at $156,000 because they say that the wound healed and it only took 3 weeks. So I don't have any pictures of what the wound looks like today, but based on what I see, that's a pretty bad burn. The jury ultimately came back with the award of $800,000, and the little girl, her name is Olivia. Her mother is named Falana Holmes, and she said that she's happy that they listened to her little girl, and she had no expectations. So this is more than fair for me, and you know now that case can be put away. It's another example of McDonald's, the new McDonald's lawsuit. Everybody knows the famous coffee case from the 90s. So also in Florida, we're on this What the Florida segment. We also talked about this. This is another story. Um, the family of Christian Ombumseli has filed a lawsuit against the building security where he and his girlfriend, Courtney Clenny, lived. This is a new lawsuit because they'd already filed a lawsuit, but the lawsuit claims that security stood outside for 12 minutes as she stabbed him to death and then called 911. Now they're saying that they could have saved his life, and also talks about some of the past domestic disputes they had. So kind of creating the understanding that the security and the building were on notice of the possibility of this type of situation. So when the police arrived at Clinty's unit and heard yelling while knocking, no, when the security, arrived at Clinty's unit and heard yelling while knocking on the door, they did nothing despite knowing her history of past disturbances in the unit and common areas. She is said to have erratic, volatile, and aggressive behavior, and was recently diagnosed with a mental health disorder. So her attorneys are arguing whether or not it was self-defense, and Ombuseli's family is saying that she was an abuser. So it's going to come out what happened. She's facing second-degree murder, and this is just a new lawsuit, so we won't spend much time, but we will stay tuned. But you can even see here where they were engaged in some type of incident prior to the killing of this man. And then we have a couple more quick stories that we want to talk about. Also in Florida, there was a hit and run accident in Miami Gardens. One of the three people struck was a 67-year-old grandmother. She was taken off life support. Her family says she was an angel. Family member says she was leaving Miami-Dade County Social Service Center when she was run over by a driver in a parking lot. The driver fled the scene. The oldest son of the victim was also hit and thrown onto the hood of the car, injuring his leg and face. He survived, as did an employee from the center who was also hit, according to the police. The police later arrested 62-year-old Sharon Cox in the hit and run. She's currently charged with leaving the scene of a crash causing serious bodily injury, but the family said they want additional charges filed. She's currently on house arrest. So again, we talk about this to talk about how important it is to make sure, one, that you have your estate planning in order. So if something untimely like this happens, your family knows what to do. But two, make sure that you have uninsured motorist coverage, so that this is coverage that protects you in the event that you get hit by, it's underinsured/underinsured. So if you get hit by somebody who doesn't have enough insurance, or if you get hit by someone who doesn't have any insurance, even in a hit and run as a pedestrian, your uninsured motorist coverage would kick in, and you would receive compensation for your injuries, or your family would receive compensation for your death if you were unfortunate enough to pass away. And then last, we're talking about these two who were charged with leaving their child in a hot car, returning from a party from the 4th of July. Um, Unfortunately, the child died in the car um, overnight. So this was the 10th child to die after being left in a hot car in the country, and the 5th child to die in Florida so far this year. They're saying that the number of Florida hot car deaths is going to surpass last year's number. It's very sad. The baby still had a core temperature of 104.4, and this was 3 hours after the baby was taken out of the hot car. The couple, Joel and Jasmine Rondon, tested positive for meth and marijuana and alcohol after investigators say they left their child behind in the car. So, you know, there's an organization, Kid in Car Safety. They report that it's actually rare for drugs and alcohol to be involved in hot car tragedies. The majority are unknowingly left by an otherwise loving, responsible parent or caregiver. So something that they say that you could do to try to ensure that this doesn't happen is leave something um, important in your back seat. So what's more important than your child? I don't know, but the examples that they give are your phone or a shoe. So I do think that if you drove with your left shoe in the back seat, that you probably would remember to get your shoe. So that's not necessarily a bad suggestion, but um, I have seen now where they're making the cars to like remind you, please check the back seat for children or pets. So that's pretty good. The technology is finally being used for that. And also, um, there was one other thing I want to tell you about this. Oh, yeah, I can't remember, but it's very sad. I hope that you know, these stories kind of start to decrease and we don't see them as much as we have in the past. But um, it seems like they're going up. People's attention is not where it needs to be. People are using their phones and moving fast and thinking they can go, um, run out and run back real quick. That's what I was going to tell you. Also, leaving the windows cracked is not enough. It's still going to be way too hot, so you just can't leave your children in a car unattended. So it's very important that we protect the babies. I feel very bad for this little girl who passed away, 18 months old, and I hope there is a day when we don't have to talk about these things. But for now, we do, and we made it. It's a lot, I know, but if you're still here with us, I thank you. I want to say that again, we do this show for you. So if you have any questions, leave comments about anything that we talked about. You can leave an audio message at speakpipe.com / dope black lawyer. You can send an email to holla at dopeblacklawyer.com. We're on Twitter, Threads, IG, obviously on YouTube. Follow us at Dope Black Lawyer on all of these platforms. The key thing is if you have an issue and you want a dope black lawyer to represent you, we have a network of thousands all across the United States. But please don't leave us a public message. If you want that, send us a DM, send us an email, send us an audio message on SpeakPipe, and we will get back with you ASAP to connect you with a dope black lawyer. So that's all I have for today. Remember, if you get hurt or the police pull you over, holla at your boy, the dope black lawyer.